being masculine is not bad, for a man. Mm-hmm. It's expected for one, but it needs to be controlled. It needs to be understood. You need to know what true masculinity looks like, when it's appropriate. Because as a man, let's start there. What is a man? How did God design us as a man?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. I want to start off with a definition. This is toxic masculinity, a cultural concept of manliness that glorifies stoicism, strength, virility, dominance, and that is socially maladaptive or harmful to mental health. Today in our episode, we want to discuss an attack. We're just talking about exactly what it is. It's the world versus black men. And I know my brothers here, we got some thoughts about it, but we are the people.
We are black men. Yeah.
Black men. Yeah. And so there's so many things that are happening right now, like terms like toxic masculinity. We've talked about it before a little bit about when we were talking about the definition of a man. Some of them just not understanding who they are, but also the societal onpouring of just confusion that makes us kind of forget, like, wait a minute, we are supposed to be strong. It's okay to be strong. It's okay to protect. It's okay to provide. But we get stuff like toxic masculinity that makes you kind of think differently about, like, am I supposed to be the guy that stands up when someone is, So let's talk about it.
Yeah. It's a term that I think this term just popped up like maybe a few years back. I honestly do not remember even hearing this term before like 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's always caught my ear because I will say, growing up in the 90s, I think my generation was a little overly aggressive. Mm-hmm. It was kind of taught. And so I will say there were some habits that were learned as a generation that maybe we have to make adjustments on, but I think we have to be careful with this terminology though, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because there's power in words, and when we are saying being masculine is, attached to the word toxic, I think that's where the danger comes into, because especially when we look at our younger generation, mm-hmm. we almost have an extreme the other way.
Yeah.
It's almost like being masculine or being a man is frowned upon, and to me it's like we have to sit and we set the definitions of what's right and wrong. That comes from the elders, from leadership, and we disseminate top down. But we gotta be the ones to set that term, not let other people put these definitions on us.
You know what, man? I had never heard the term before until you guys brought it up to me, right? So it blows my mind that it's been out there. But Mike, I like what you said, because it seems like these terms come out, and when you say toxic, like you said, it just, everything that comes after that is like, it's bad. So being masculine is not bad, for a man. Mm-hmm. It's expected for one, but it needs to be controlled. It needs to be understood. You need to know what true masculinity looks like, when it's appropriate. Because as a man, let's start there. What is a man? How did God design us as a man? Mm-hmm. He designed us to protect. He designed us to lead. He designed us to do certain things in a certain way. Yeah. And that all centers around being masculine, because being masculine is really being manly, right?
Yeah.
So, can you be overly manly? Can you be over the top and you trying to flex too much in your manhood? Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought up the terms, because when you add a word in or take a word out, mm-hmm. it can change the entire meaning of a set. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, we have in the Bible, it uses adultery, a sin. Stay away from it. Yeah. Don't do it. It's wrong. But when you say, we just had an affair, which one sounds better?
They softened it up.
They softened it. So now it doesn't seem like, actually, you should treat this like life or death. Don't ever do something like that. Mm-hmm. That's the only, it says the only thing that's legal that should bring two people apart from a marriage is when someone goes off and has an affair with somebody else.
And that's only because God knew man's heart was so hardened for forgiveness that he gave that out. It don't mean that he condoned it. He just gave it out because he knew man's heart was so damaged. But yeah.
And so it's like the term, when you change the word, in our minds, we start to think of it differently. And so when you say something like toxic masculinity, you're pointing people in the wrong direction, especially because we were talking about what is a man, because a lot of us don't know what that is.
No.
Like before you even get to, your age where you're having kids and getting married and everything, a lot of males haven't even understood what a man is.
No, they don't.
To be able to really exemplify that. And so when you put the word toxic next to masculinity, now we got a problem, because like you were saying, you were like, okay, can you be too masculine? Can you be too much of a man? I'd argue from the Bible's context, you can't.
No.
I think so. What Rodney was saying, we first have to define what is an authentic man. And that's kind of what we talk about in our manhood meeting. To be a man, you are meant to be a leader. To be a great leader, you have to be able to serve. You have to submit to something. We, as Christians, we submit to God. And everybody in the household should understand that we all submit to something, and it's an order and a way of doing things. But I think that when we're really talking about the root of the issues, we have to address the fact that a lot of our brothers weren't in these households. And a lot of it's systemic, a lot of it's a lot of reasons, but the generation that we're seeing now, a lot of these kids, they weren't raised with a man in the house.
Yeah, and it's multiple generations that I think, to your point, we get into why, I want to say word from the word toxic, but why masculinity has been kind of misunderstood and misapplied.
Yeah.
Really.
You know what, and I want to say too, because I've noticed like a weird trend on social media lately. And it's where brothers are like going on these tangents about women, like our women, black women.
Yeah.
And they basically saying, black women are saying this and that. And then other brothers are commenting. And I'm like, man, this is very strange, because to be honest, this is what I've seen women do. They'll have these discussions and going on these tangents. And in my lens, my viewpoint, when I see things like that, and there's no disrespect, it is what it is, but when I see it, I tend to think these are brothers that were raised around predominantly women. Because they sat around and watched their mom and their aunties maybe talk about certain things away, and now they feel like that's what they should do, when really, like, the men that I grew up around, we ain't spend a lot of time talking about, what the women are doing and why we, like, I've never heard those type of conversations. It's funny, because like a sister of mine, and we were just having this conversation. She was like upset, like, I can't believe, this. And I was like, listen, sis, don't let the internet confuse you. It's a few brothers that if it was in a room full of men, we may not even hear these, we might not even know they were there.
Yeah.
But on the internet, they have a loud voice. And so it's amplified. It seems like they're representing all these men. I said, but this is really a few brothers, because in real life, I've never heard the men that I've been around sit around and have these conversations.
No.
I think the culture is really kind of just trying to move away from masculinity as far as possible. They're trying to blur these lines, because when you come in contact, they are their best to absolutely erase it.
Yes.
And so, like, we've still got some people who understand that there is a male. You're supposed to be a male, and what that actually means. For example, we've got in the lesbian culture, right? There's the feminine lesbian, and then there's the what is the name?
Butch.
I don't know.
The butch lesbian. And so, like, you'll come in contact with one of them, and then I've been in situations back in school when they will almost talk about a guy and the butch lesbian as the same thing. It's like, so this is a guy and this is a butch lesbian. That's a guy and that's a guy. There's no difference between this man and this woman. Yeah. And now that level of thinking right there, I think is the most toxic thing ever.
Well, it confuses things, right?
It 100% confuses things.
And it's like, and it's all about, what we're getting on, and we don't want to jump here, but it's all plays a part, is identity.
Yeah.
And I think even going from where Mike started, where you started, like in the home, who are raising boys or young men, especially black men, it's a lot of black women, grandparents, all this, so that absence of a man. Then you talk about identity in general. So where are they getting their identity from? They're getting their identity from the people that are raising them. And because black men, we gotta put black men on Front Street, because if as a whole we don't step up, and we haven't been stepping up to be fathers, to be leaders in our homes, the identity is gonna come from whoever you're around.
Yeah. Well, let's go back. Let's go back a little bit, because so we're talking about the world versus black men. Before that, there was something, we've been attacked for so long, that's what caused this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you the historian, so I think
why? Because I'm old?
There's a lot of systemic issues, and I've talked about this before, but I always think about that Willie Lynch letter. And it literally outlines, we're going to pit the women against the men, the young against the old, the light skin against the dark skin. Because if you create,
we done broke all of those.
We done broke all them rules. Yeah, we got age, we got everything. If you create confusion and division from the inside, that's a war strategy.
Oh, it is.
That's a war. It's mental warfare. So if you can attack their mind and you can control their mind, then the body's going to follow.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I know where Martell's going, where you going too. Going back to slavery, at least we're talking about black men in America, right? So it starts in slavery, and it starts with the whole treating like cattle, breeding purposes. The fact that even if a man and woman got married back then, I mean, you turn this on to Frederick Douglass' book, but it's like, somebody could take your wife, the slave owner could take your wife, sleep with her, and then you looking at her the next day. I mean, how you feel as a man? That just takes away.
Man, it's like everything.
They do. And then, like you said, the whole strategy around, the way that the slaves were controlled is like what you talked about. They put a hierarchy. You had the house slaves.
Yeah.
You had those who had favor. You had the field hands. You had all these different people, and it's like, so they had an order. They would even defend the slave master. You follow me?
And even in later times, like I'll think of like the 80s, where you had this term, black on black crime. When we know statistically, any crime is going to happen in that proximity.
Yes.
So it's going to be white on white crime, brown on brown crime. Whoever you're closest to when you're in a lack of means, that's where the most crime is going to happen. But when you start making these terms like black on black crime, or you're showing these images and you're always showing us in a criminal state, or even Africa, like the way they used to display images of how Africa's a continent, first of all. Because a lot of people don't realize it. They'll say, well, let's go to Africa.
Public service
what
announcement.
country in Africa?
Public service announcement.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I don't think like North America is a continent. Africa is huge.
Yeah.
So if they're pinpointing on certain images and they want us to believe this is a totality of where we come from, when to be honest, Africa is one of the most richest resource continents ever.
It's where life started.
It's where everything started. Yeah. But they don't want us to believe that about where we come from. They want us to believe that we started as slaves.
But that goes back to that identity piece, and we talk about the world versus black people. The attack has always been there to help control, divide, and eliminate, right? And so, we hit it on the head. And that whole thing, that word black, and the connotation that comes with it.
Yeah. Black is a color. It's not an ethnicity.
Exactly. But they make that, even as a color, it's deemed as being dark, not, just unattractive in the sense that you don't, you got a dark spirit. Yeah. All these different words that lead you to feel like black has a negative connotation to it. And then white is viewed as like clean, pure. Yeah. Right? Black is seen as dirty. So all these subtle little things have all been put in our head. Yeah. And you talk about the systematic racism, all this other thing. People they look at you, and like you said, black on black crime. I love that. I'm gonna get off this for a minute. You don't hear white on white crime.
Never heard that.
You don't. But if you live, if all white people live in a neighborhood, the crime is gonna only be white people stealing from white people.
Yep.
And guess what? In black neighborhoods, it's mostly black people stealing for black people.
Any neighborhood, yeah.
Any day, yeah.
That's a fact. No, the thing is, it's crazy too, because like we got, like you just said, I mean, they took us down during slavery. We had, like you just said, the older versus the younger. We had the light versus the dark. And then we had all this division, and they were separating literally the fathers from the rest of his family. And so then you fast forward, then we got all the drug situations in every single inner city, the black on black crime. And now we got today that we don't even want you to call yourself a man. Like, don't even say that, because look, you know, a boy can wear pink and makeup, and he can do his nails, and also your sister can call herself a dude too, because y'all the same.
Yeah.
And depending on what day it is, they can change their mind.
Exactly.
And one thing I want to, going into the vein of what you were speaking on earlier, we can't help where we started. So I don't want anyone to get misconstrued like, well, I didn't have a father, I have my mom. That doesn't mean that, you know, you're any less than or anything.
No.
But what we're saying is, now that we're adults, we have to recognize what's going on, and we have to be a part of the solution for the new generation coming. Right. I'll say all the time, you know, I have 3 boys of my own, but when I'm out seeking the kids that don't have anybody, because it's a ton of kids that need leadership and guidance. You don't have to be somebody's biological father to step in a father figure role and give them some type of masculine influence, because we were all young men at one point, right? Yeah. We all know how important it is to have honorable men to look up to and mirror and benchmark.
I'm glad you said it, because you don't want people to think that if you don't have that model, you can't be a good man.
Right.
Look, my dad didn't know his father. He never met his father. He was raised by his mother, his great mother. I mean, those were, you know, and his brothers. They all are solid. You know, so the point, I'm glad you said that, and the fact that it's about allowing, and this is maybe for mothers out there too, allowing that impact of a man, a good man, in your child's life to understand what it is. Because it takes a man to understand how to be a man. Yeah. You know?
Not just allow, but seek.
Seek. Yeah.
As a mother, as an auntie, you should be seeking honorable men to come and impact and influence your son.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to say this too, because I know we have some sisters that watch this podcast. We love and honor y'all for stepping up, because a lot of times, to be honest, you know, sisters have had to step up in these roles, and y'all done an amazing job. Yes. We're not doing anything to discredit you. What we're saying is, we need to start shifting the narratives into, okay, this is something that we're seeing it going on, where our brothers and sisters are kind of against each other. Now we have to come back to the table and collaborate. We got to work together.
Yep.
So I think, you know, as you were moving on to the solution here, because I mean, the subject we're talking about is the world versus black men. So I think if we in a battle, then we're gonna have to figure out how to fight.
Yeah, right? Strategy. You need a war
we gotta
strategy.
put together a strategy.
Yeah.
And so I think one aspect of our war strategy is putting together strong men that are building themselves up, cultivating themselves, and sharpening each other so that they can go out and raise their own families. One group that I've seen do this tremendously well is Freedom in Christ Ministry, the Men 2.0.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm gonna go ahead and invite anybody who wants to come. If you are in Michigan, around the Metro Detroit area, we have it. It's once a month. It's the second Saturday
of the month.
Every single month. And we are bringing together those men, for sure. But I think that's a part of the solution. We need that.
We do, man. I want to hit something you touched on a couple times, and I want to make sure we got clarity around this too, is that some of the examples you brought up about the sexuality, the homosexuality, things that are happening, is what creates some confusion in people.
Yeah.
Okay. And it comes back to identity again, and the whole piece about that whole demasculization that's happening in our society as a whole, especially with black men. It's like, I was watching something the other day, and I'm like, you know, if you can't determine who you are on a given day, then you lost. You lost because you never have to make a stand. You never, because you could be whatever you want any day just because you want to escape something.
Yeah.
You know?
You have no anchor. When you said that, I thought about like a ship in the middle of the ocean. And if you've ever been on like a cruise and you looked around and you can't see a piece of land, you get very humble as to how much water really runs the world. And if you don't have an anchor to pull you and keep you stabilized, you can literally you just drifting around. You flow wherever you flow. And so in life, we have to make sure that these kids that are going to be adults one day, they know and understand their anchor points. And as kids are evolving and growing, they need to be able to see some of these potential examples because they're seeing so much nonsense on these phones. So they need to be able to counter some of this. That's another thing that we haven't talked about is the spiritual element. It's spiritual warfare on our kids too.
It is. Well,
it's a lot of evil elements that they're being exposed to, and that causes confusion.
Yeah,
it does. And I think, with everything we're saying, and when you're talking about the solution, you're talking about it too, with Man 2.0, what we're doing, and just understand, Man 2.0 is one, I call it satellite that's working to do that.
Oh yeah.
But it starts, and look, ladies, we're not making excuses for men. We asking men to step up.
Yeah.
And learn how to be man. That anchor, like you talked about, the more we got solid brothers together, starting with the spiritual walk, how we God made us as man, help us build that foundation.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, build man up so we can get our stuff out. You know what I mean?
I want to piggyback on, we're not only asking brothers to step up, we're leading by example. We're gearing up to have a manhood session right after this podcast.
Yeah.
So we're showing our brothers, like, listen, we're giving a platform, Brother Rodney, Freedom of Christ Ministry, they've given us a platform to where we can come, and it's been growing. We've been fellowshipping, and we're sharpening each other because we're having positive ideas, and it's coming from the right place.
Yeah.
And I think another point in that is like we're bringing them together, but this stuff too. Where do you fit in the solution?
Yeah.
Because these conversations, this is needed. This has to happen because it's going to reach somebody who's going to have a thought. They're going to think about their son, and they're going to do something different. And so conversations like these have to happen as well. It's a part of the solution. Our strategy is not just we need one dude to stand in front of another dude. You need to be strong. You need to provide. No. Listen. Have new thoughts. Think new things. Develop your understanding of what a man is. Act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're in the age of information. Even right now, a woman can be sitting around like, I don't have uncles. He doesn't have a grandfather. I don't know what to do. Show him this podcast. Show the young man. We can't choose our parents, but we can choose our mentors. Even if you've never met them, YouTube, I call it YouTube University. You can literally find information on how to build a house, a car, anything. Go ahead and find and seek out the type of men, role models that you would like these young men to have, and expose them to it.
Yep. I mean, and like we say, we out getting ready for Man 2.0, so you'll see people walking around. But the point though is, don't get distracted by that. Make sure you understand the message. And I'm gonna say something too about if you got comments, because one thing, we had a podcast shoot and we saw the comments, people commenting back and forth.
That was
sharing their thoughts, sharing their hey, we need to talk. They're talking online with each other, building each other up too. So it's many ways you can do this. So the thing is, this black man versus the world, we've been fighting all our lives.
Yeah.
We have. I mean, one thing I got respect for as a people, if you look at slavery, I look at my parents, my great parents, they stayed together, fight. We've always fought.
Yeah.
We have not been squashed.
Now that's something I want to say too. Just speaking about narratives, we really are built for this.
Yeah.
We by far the strongest people walking this planet Earth. And it's kind of by design, they bred us into be this super powerful. So once we start realizing that up here and then here, that's when we become and start doing this, collaborating with other like-minded individuals. That's when we become dangerous, because we have the talent, but we have to point it in one direction.
Yeah. And I think just getting to our close here, and I want to get a statement from both of you on this right here. I think it's crucially important. So like because there's a lot of misconceptions. We're talking about the world versus black men. There's a lot of misconceptions that might lead you to believe that some things a man is not allowed to do. So like, for example, if I were like 16 years old and I went, and this is no shot at anybody, but if I decided that I wanted to dance, I wanted that to be my profession, right? Then I know that I have uncles that will be against it. I know that my father would be against it. And I know that everybody would look at me crazy. But if I just so happen to be extraordinary in dancing, the issue that we come in contact with is, okay, someone has a false idea of what a man is. So they think that certain things a man cannot do. But who said that a man can't dance?
Yeah.
Who taught you that?
Yeah.
What makes you believe that? I can still take care of my family. I can still be a cultivator in my community. I can still be the exact image of who God called me to be, dancing.
Yeah.
So with your gifts, with your abilities, how can you first get rid of all the false information, all the misconceptions, all the garbage, get rid of that, understand what a man truly is, and then be that in the lives of the people around you? I think that's step one. What are y'all thoughts?
I think that's a great step to start with. The other step is where Mike kind of was taking us a minute ago, is about your spirituality. You need to know who God is. If you don't know who God is, how do you know your identity? You let the world make your identity for you. So we are spiritual based. I mean, God runs this show.
Yeah.
So the point is that, and that's what we learn, how God designed us as men, especially as black men. We need to understand that we have a God to start with, that our identity is with Him. And if we focus on that, it ain't about whether it be dance or whether it be cooking. I don't know what that doesn't define masculinity. The Bible defines masculinity, and Jesus actually.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of what Rodney's saying, after you learn who and what God is, now you have to go learn who and what you are as a man. You have to really spend time to understand your strengths, understand your weaknesses, and understand your anchor points too. What are some of your core principles that I don't bend those regardless of what circumstance I'm in? Me personally, I don't bend the knee. I'm like a Spartan warrior. I don't bend the knee, and that's just how it is. You know, that doesn't mean I'm not humble. That doesn't mean that I'm not fearful at times, but it's one of my core principles, you know? So you have to figure out who you are and then be that in everything that you do, because how you do anything is how you do everything. That's where a lot of people, they go astray, where when I'm over here, when the lights are on, people are watching me, now I can be the guy. But then when I'm with, you know, my family, or I'm irritated, I'm tired, I'm not. It don't work like that. You gotta be who you are at all times. And with the understanding, we're gonna fall short sometimes. We're human, we're not perfect. Jesus is perfect, we're not Him. So we're gonna fall short, but that doesn't give us an excuse to not strive for excellence.
I was gonna say, people starting to gather here for another meeting, so I think we need to probably put a cap on it. Yeah.
So to wrap this all up, I think we definitely outlined that there was a pre before on this attack. This is not new. Black men have been attacked for a very, very, very long time. And it's been, this attack has kind of evolved, but it's never really stopped. It's just taken a different form. But we know that if we understand who we are, who God is, how God made us, and we start to actually live out the life that we were called to live, then we can be the men that we were called to be, no matter what we're doing and no matter where we are.
Yeah.
So I want to make two requests. First, if you ain't subscribed, I need you to subscribe right now. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Most definitely share it with somebody, so that might be 3 requests. Yeah. And if you are in the Metro Detroit area and you are looking for a group of strong men who are actually taking care of their family, their kids, who are actually taking care of their business, who are actually developing themselves spiritually, I want you to know about Men 2.0, FIC Men 2.0. The link will be in the description. You need to come and be a part of this group. It's on the second Saturday every single month. This is the kind of group that you want to be in. If you're an entrepreneur, we have entrepreneurs here. If you work a 9 to 5, we got people who work 9 to 5s here. But at the bottom line, the baseline of it is God is the center, God is the focus, and we'll be developing you spiritually and putting you around the people that you want to be around to start having the thoughts you need to have. So thank you for tuning into this episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. We hope to see you next week.
Peace.